All right. Hola, hello. How are we today? How are we? Let me check and see if my microphone got turned down. Give me 1 sec here. Yeah, it did. All right, there we go. Let me fix that. Okay. Good God. Let's get this depression session started. Yes, thank you, Matthew. Sir Jim dropping the elbow from the top rope. Hello, here we go. Sir Jim to save the club. James of the King with some good news. Yeah, and I will be. I mean, I was just having a conversation with someone not 3 hours ago. I mean, when I woke up this morning, kind of first thing about all of this and Sir Jim and things like that. So I find the timing very, very interesting, and I think I can explain a lot more of what's going on, even if I can't be definitive yet. Even if I cannot be definitive yet, I think I can explain the situation quite a bit. Quite a bit. Hello, hello. Let me let some people get in here. Sir Jim, yeah, well. Thanks, Millsy. A Muppeteer's gambling ring. Oh, God. I know what Laurie said. I said to you in the last live, I mean, it was just yesterday, that I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get sacked. Because the new hierarchy haven't been there long. I mean, I said that just literally just yesterday. That, that it was just that I was concerned that because they were not there long, that they were concerned about going and making a change so quickly, the people who are in place. And that as well, I mentioned one thing you can kind of look at is that Dan Ashworth has never had to sack a manager before. Someone mentioned, I think it was Chris Hughton at Brighton, but he was already on his way out, I believe, when Dan Ashworth came in. Yeah, can I put a steak logo on screen? I could put a steak on the screen, maybe. I'll put steak, like I said. If I can get Omaha Steaks, if you're in America, you know who they are, to sponsor it, and we can stick them on the bottom, I would definitely take the money for that. I'm happy to advertise gambling your money on sweet filet mignon instead of whatever the fuck that steak website is. But I can explain many things. I think, and give some perspective. While we're waiting, yes, please make sure to like the stream, like the video, keep things going. Honestly, the reason is that gambling companies make a lot of money off of impressionable young people on football Twitter. And football Twitter is huge. And that's, Manscaped obviously sponsors and has sponsored myself and some other people, but it's not that profitable for them as I understand it. They don't make that much money, but crypto gambling, yeah. But a lot of gambling and betting is extreme. I mean, it's insanely profitable for them when they do it. So that's why. Yeah. 8th place finish won't be acceptable. Yeah, agreed. Okay, let's get to it then. Give me just a mo. Let's talk about Mr. Jimothy's quotes. There we go. Let's go on it first, okay? So Darren Rohn in Barcelona, I think it was, he asked Sir Jim about his thoughts on Erik Ten Hag, and he said, asked if he has faith in the Red Devils boss. He said, I don't want to answer that question. I like Erik. Okay, I mean, there's your first line, okay? Just, I don't want to answer that question. Why not? Do you remember back in April when I was telling you that they were having pretty heavy doubts on Ten Hag, and they kept asking him if he was going to back Erik to be here next year, and he kept not answering it? And you kept having these discussions where people then asked Ten Hag, do you need backing from Sir Jim or blah, blah, blah? He said, no, I don't need it. We're together. The same stuff you're hearing now is pretty much identical to back then. It's pretty much identical back then. And back then Sir Jim had already pretty much decided to let him go. They did not follow through on that. But anyway, he says, I don't want to answer that question. Again, why? He could just say he has faith in Erik. I like Erik. I think he's a very good coach, but at the end of the day, it's not my call. It's the management team that's running Manchester United that have to decide how we best run the team in many different respects. But that team that's running Manchester United has only been together since June or July. They weren't there in January, February, March, April. Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, they only arrived in July. They've only been there, you can count it in weeks almost. They've not been there long, so they need to take stock and make some sensible decisions. Our objective is very clear. We want to take Manchester United back to where it should be, and it's not there yet, obviously. That's very clear. So, you can read into the answers and all of things however you want. Then there's a video which gives kind of the mood and stuff on that as well. It's not an old video. This just happened. And obviously you can kind of read into it however you want. A lot of people are going to read into those kind of comments differently based on their views, their predispositions to things, all of that. But there's a couple of things on this, right? Yeah, I mean, you can look at it in quite a few different ways here, and I'll try to explain, because I was just talking with someone about this, like I said at the start, not a few hours ago, and obviously I've been trying to understand the position of everybody in place and where they're at. And, as I shared earlier, yesterday, last week, all of that, there are serious concerns over how we are playing from the management team, as he puts it. Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox, as we know, etc. Right? There are serious concerns in that respect, but they have only been there a short time. That's what I shared as well, which is aligned with what Sir Jim wanted, with what Sir Jim said as well. They have only been there a short time, and my thinking or my feeling from talking to a lot of people on this was that, and I think other people have heard this as well. I understand Laurie said something similar about that, is that, there's a feeling that maybe they don't want to act so quickly on this, that they want to have more time. As I mentioned, they were planning to review things closer to the end of the year, and it seems it would be quite quick to make a change when they did. Now, that being said, especially, again, there's mixed things about the whole Omar and Ashworth interview before Liverpool, a month ago, because they backed Ten Hag, but they also divorced themselves from the decision. And Sir Jim has divorced them from the decision to keep him as well. Has said, well, they weren't there, when we did that. So it's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit messy. I fear, in a respect, that they will think, as the management team, that they haven't been there long enough to do something about this, to make such a big call. Now, I think this whole thing with managers and sackings and all of that is so over dramatic in general. I've made my position clear on this many times in the past. For anybody who knows me, and they think that I have an agenda against Ten Hag, it's actually my predisposition is to be that managers get way too much time. Someone shared a stat the other day, right? Like, in the time that we've had 5 United managers, you know how many Madrid have had? 9? Bayern have had 10. Barcelona have had 9. It's 8 or 9. Every top club changes managers. And I've said before that I think this soap opera that surrounds managers at Manchester United is a holdback from having Sir Alex for 30 years. Because when you've had the greatest manager of all times, you think, okay, yeah, we have to stick with a manager forever. You don't. You really don't. I think managers should get 1 to 2 years to show that they really know what they're doing and then go. That's it. And you just hire and fire quickly. That's how you do it in business anyway. You hire and fire quickly. You know, I understand they had structures in place, but guess what those structures did? They said, hey, yeah, it's not good enough. They were able to make quick and fast judgments and things like that. And I understand. I'm just saying the drama, like people tell you it takes years and years and years to see if a manager's any good and get their ideas in place. It doesn't. It just doesn't. It doesn't take that long. Yeah, Bayern had a bunch of new people in there too. A lot of clubs change very quickly, you know, and under Abramovich, obviously Chelsea would change their manager like every other year and then win the league. You know, they'd have managers come in and win the league in their first and second years. Just kept happening. So it's not just about, you know, it doesn't take years for a manager to come across things. I think it's very over dramatic. And I think that the part of the danger with keeping managers too long is we see exactly what we see, which is that you end up buying more players for them and building a squad that then ends up not being aligned with the next manager because you spend so much time building on managers. That's a general philosophy of just management though that I have. I don't get it. It's the only place I've ever seen this idea that you have to like stick with managers for years and years. Any other sport, you just replace them 1 year to the next. Arsenal wouldn't. Did you? Yeah, but here's the thing, Christoph. That's true and it isn't, but I think people misremember the Arsenal timeline or didn't actually watch them and just go look at the tables back then. First of all, Ted had joined mid-season, right? He had joined mid-season. His second full season, they finished 5th. And if you look at their record from January on, which was essentially 24 months to 30 months, they were incredible. Incredibly hard to beat in one of the best teams in the league. That title run the following year, which was his third full season in charge, was not out of the blue. The progress was really readily apparent. So he really took off after about 18 to 24 months. Things really kicked on. And so I think that's sort of your main point of measurement. At 18 to 24 months, do you start to kick on in terms of performance? Arsenal did. They started to play really, really good football at that point in time and really effective football. They started getting really, really hard to beat. In addition to that, it's the same with Jurgen Klopp. It took him a while to win something, but you could see they had huge progress over 2 years, right? So no, I think a lot of it is a holdover. You know what I mean, from the old days. In general, why does it have to be so dramatic? If it's not good enough, just change them and get somebody else in there. It's the same thing with players. If someone's not good enough, just sell them and get a new one. Imagine if you said players need 4 years to get going. You know, it's come on, like people can play football. It's not at the end of the day, it's a simpler game than people are being made and than people make it out. You get somebody who produces results and you go for it. It is what it is. You know, I don't think it's that complicated in general. And I do think it's a really weird holdover. And I don't think it's about being a Ten Hag fan because I saw it with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I saw it I saw it less with Jose Mourinho because for some reason people were like just loved Pogba and Martial and all of that at that time. And I thought that was a weird mistake because in that case, I think he was a manager who actually should have stuck by because we totally undermined him during the summer, that World Cup summer. We didn't really back him at all. Like actually didn't back him at all. And then undermined him with players. And that was different. It's sort of funny. People stick with the wrong managers. People stick with the wrong things. But I don't know. They stick with it. They stick with it too long. I yap about whatever I want to yap about. Yeah. And you can yap in silence. Anyway, so excuse me. Excuse me. All right. Anyway, so what is it? What is the actual situation as of now? All right. So as I said earlier, in the last video, in the last live, and in the little summary that I did as well, I think I made this very clear, that the hierarchy wanted to have more time to put things in place. The management team in present has not been there long, and they want to have more time. And it is totally correct, and I'm going to say this truthfully, that as of right now, Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada don't want to sack Ten Hag, okay? Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada don't want to sack Ten Hag yet. They don't want to make a manager change yet. I'm not saying that they're convinced he's the right guy, because I'm fairly certain they already know he's not for the long term. But again, it's two different discussions based on your goals and targets for the season. I don't think they want to understand that aspect. They don't want to make a change quickly. So when Laurie says in Talk of the Devils, that he's not hearing there's an appetite for changing the manager, that is correct. It is true. They're not sitting there going, yeah, we're doing it. We're changing the manager now. They're not. They'd rather not change manager yet. They'd rather not make this decision so quickly. That's what they don't want to do, frankly. Does that mean that they're like sold on Ten Hag or anything like that? Again, no, not at all, actually. But they set a plan in place about us progressing through the season and having time to put things into place. Okay. However, there's more to it than that. Okay. Because they already do, of course, have doubts. And how do I put this, like, delicately and balanced? Jim Ratcliffe can say that it's not his call. I mean, it is, first of all. He will have to be one approving a hiring, a firing, or anything, because as far as their ownership agreement goes, he's in charge of that, right? Secondly, he wants to leave it to management, the people in place, to do the things that need to be done. But if you've ever been in a high-performance business or working environment, you will a little bit know how to read between the lines on how people act. And owners and board members will leave things to people on the job to make the decision and to fix things and to get things right. And they will stand by that that's what they're doing, that they appointed people to resolve it. However, you will know that they put pressure on people when things get bad, even if they're leaving it up to them. In every single business and every single organization on earth, this happens. And in every single sports team, this happens too, where the owners care or are present at all. And I know that people at Ineos, including Sir Jim Ratcliffe, are quite unhappy personally with how things are going. And that they're not very tolerant of the way things are going. It's really hard for someone not in a football position to measure, what's the word for it? To measure, how would I put this? Like, it's really hard for people in this position to measure progress, to measure, to measure how things are going. He wants to leave that to them. But as the owner of the club and as a person responsible for the state of Manchester United, things can get to a point where the people who are not qualified but are in charge don't make the decisions, but they tell someone they have to do something about it. You understand the difference? There's a difference between making the decision and telling someone they have to do something about it. Fuck off, okay? Just go away. If you don't want to listen, then don't whine when I'm not answering, because it's not that quick of an answer. Goodbye. Anyway, if there are two different things there. There's making a decision and there's putting pressure on people to do something about a situation. Owners and executives very often don't make decisions, but they put pressure on other people to do something about a situation. You understand that there is a difference there. Jim Ratcliffe doesn't want to walk down to Manchester United and say, sack Eric Ten Hag and hire this guy. He likes Thomas Tuchel. He tried to hire Thomas Tuchel. He would like to hire Thomas Tuchel if it was entirely up to him. He would do that. He would. But he's not going to step in and do that himself. What he will do is go to Omar and Dan and say, yes, if you don't do something about this, that's a problem. I need you to do something about this. Like, this is not a what do you call it? This is not a soft person. You know, he didn't get to having the biggest businesses, you know, massive multi-billion-dollar businesses by being gentle on people. He's probably a bit of a bastard. And you can see, of course, they've been pretty ruthless with the staff. These are areas he does have control. You know, cutting a bunch of staff, letting people go, all of that. And essentially, the point that he's at is that he wants to leave the decision to certain people to make the right call on a football standpoint. But things have happened, and the results that have occurred are pushing things to a point where it is untenable as an owner. Okay? He is looking at it and saying it's bad, right? He's looking at it and saying this isn't good. And it's not about Palace, and it's not about Southampton, you know, and it's not about Brighton. It's about the disasters to Liverpool, to Tottenham, and these types of games. Because for him, as the owner, and for the people looking at it, those are the games where, as a United fan, as a football fan, as an owner, as a representative of a club, you look at it and say, this is getting embarrassing, right? And it is hurting the reputation of the club at that point in time. And it starts to damage the position and similar things. And so there will reach a point where Sir Jim is not making a decision, but he will be putting pressure on people to do something about the situation. And you can go too. And he will be putting pressure on them to do something on the about the situation. And that's what an owner is supposed to do, right? That is what owners and executives always do. In business and in these situations. They don't really want to step over people and do things, but they will put pressure on them to resolve it, because this cannot go on, and we cannot continue to have these embarrassments, okay? And so Sir Jim, of course, will be at Aston Villa in Birmingham to watch this game. And he will be in Manchester afterwards for an undefined amount of time. This I know. I don't know how long yet. And I can't say that I know what his itinerary is or anything like that in detail. But I do know that he wants to, that it will matter what happens. And it's not about one game deciding the future of Ten Hag because of the judgment on the football. There is a point where the pressure, the results, where things go. Yeah, he's not going to Birmingham for the vibes, right? Where the results, where the pressure, where all of that gets so much that it almost supersedes a football decision. So it's more pressure. It's more look at it. And if you're Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada, and you're sitting there and saying, and you already know that your owner, that your boss is unhappy with how things are going, and he's sitting there next to you or a few rows back watching at Aston Villa and it goes poorly, it's definitely going to have an implication on things. And you're going to have some discussions after that. And I've been there in a job like this, and I think a lot of people have, where you don't have to, the person above you doesn't have to make a decision, but you can definitely get the idea that you're going to need to make one. That's the thing. And so that's really where it is. So even if it's been a short amount of time, even if it hasn't happened that long, even if Ashworth and Omar think it's a bit too soon to sack him from a football standpoint, if the pressure builds up from above, they will be forced to do something about it. Do you understand? And I've explored. I was like, okay, well, like what could happen? What could you do, right? Like what other ththings? And I asked this, and these are kind of stupid questions, right? I think it is a stupid question because I asked this, like, what could you step in on the training ground? You know what I mean? Like, let's say you don't want to sack him. You're Dan Ashworth and you're sitting there saying, well, it's too early to sack the manager. Could you step in on the training ground or something? You know what I mean? Like, could you go down there and be like, fine, we've left it hands off. We've let you run this team and you're running it into the ground. And we have ideas on how to fix it. So now we're going to start telling you what to do. Now, does that completely undermine Ten Hag? Probably. But at the same time, not really, because your other bosses are there. So it's not like the players can ignore it. So I don't know. I ask questions like, could that be a next step? Do you have Dan Ashworth coming down and Wilcox coming down and saying, good, now we're actually going to tell you what to do because you're fucking it up and it's going really poorly and we have to do something about it. That was my question. I don't think that, from what I got back, that's probably never going to happen, but it does happen at other clubs. And, it's like, I'm not figurehead. I'm saying where you don't leave it entirely in their hands, but you come down and say, these are ideas, we need you to, you don't even have to tell people you're doing it. It's not like you have to tell the players. It's not like you have to do that. But like, do you step in and get hands-on about that and say, yeah, I don't know. That it's just a question. It's just a question I asked, and I don't think that would be what happened. The answers I got back, nobody was inclined to do that. But I asked a few people. Like, could that be like a medium stage of how you get through this season? And no, that's it. Apparently that nobody wants to do that. But I wondered, because you got the stories last year, which weren't true. We'll say about Jason Wilcox, stepping in and saying this is how you play. And I was like, well, okay, but what if you actually did do that? And he went to Ten Hag and they were meeting and everything. I don't know. It was just a thought. It was just a thought. Anyways. So yeah, I hope that explanation was clear to anybody who has the patience of a more than a goldfish and isn't too distracted that they need me to put something down into 3 words in order to get an answer, because I think that my explanation was understandable and is quite factual. That if the pressure gets too much from ownership, if the pressure gets too much, then they will step in on it and force something to happen. So yeah, but there wasn't even any intended innuendo of goldfish. It's just goldfish are known for having very short-term memories. So anyway, yeah, that's what it is. Yes, they don't really want to sack him, but that doesn't mean people aren't concerned about it. And if the pressure gets too much, they'll be forced to make a decision. It's that simple. Without it being from Sir Jim Ratcliffe making a decision. And when I said Thomas Tuchel, what I said was Jim Ratcliffe would like Thomas Tuchel. I did not say that he would be, but again, that's where I don't think he would want to step in and, where he would want to step in and hire the manager. I don't think that's what he wants to do. That would be, he would say, you need to do something about it. He'd rather them come up with an idea of what to do and what would be the right thing to do. So it's different. It's a different discussion. So anyway, I hope that was understandable. That is the state of play at the moment. Sunday's game will matter because it builds, like I said, it adds context to the conversation, which we discussed. And I know it's a myth. It's a saying. That's why it's like a saying. It's what they're known for, even though it's not really true. But it's a saying. Yeah, it is nuanced because these are nuanced situations. You know, these are nuanced situations, and yeah, they just are. They're not that simple. I can't say that I agree with it because, like I said, I think that the leadership team, the management team needs to be more ruthless in general on this. I think that it's kind of ridiculous. Like, nobody should be this bad. And so let's talk about yesterday, because to me, yesterday was absolutely shambolic. I think it was some of the worst management I've ever seen. And what's kind of shocking is that, once again, you know, I pointed out in two straight weeks the exact problems and exactly where Team 2 would expose us, right? And in 2 straight games, people have continued to attack the same areas, the same problems, the same situations, the same the same things, and expose us, and it's on purpose. When you look at this overall, this is not a good game. We didn't win this game. We didn't play well. You could look at the second half and say we dominated possession. Yes, after they got their third goal, they sat in to defend, and we got a slab head late equalizer, went down to 10 men because they had settled in, and they missed 2 one-on-ones during that period of time. They could have scored more goals. 5 big chances to 2. People talk about missing big chances. We scored more than our missing chances. And yeah, if you look at the first half, they had 56% possession, right? So it was after the third goal that things changed, and they settled in. You can look at 29 shots, but you look at how low the XG is. We're just launching things, you know. Bruno launching things, right? He was just launching all game. These aren't good shots. Dallo launching shots. Everybody was launching shots pointlessly, except, of course, the player who should have been launching shots, who is no longer on the field, Marcus Rashford. That was, to me, one of the worst in-game substitutions I've ever seen in my life. That I've ever seen in my life is one of the worst. It is absolutely nonsensical. There's no excuse for it. You do not take off your attacking, threat. And by the way, yeah, I mean, look, he scored his goal on 0.04 XG, right? Dribbling 5 players. He's 100% dribble rate, 100% ground duels, only lost possession 4 times. Absolute, unbelievable nonsense, okay, to bench him at halftime. You're in a European away game, and you have a forward in form who is taking men on, winning duels, creating havoc, and causing problems for the opposition, and you're 2-2, and you take him off? It's the same thing as getting benched for Palace after Barnsley. It's like he's been saying, well, Rashford he'll start getting goals. He starts getting goals, and each time he does, he's gone. Each time he does, he's gone. Like, what are you doing? That's 2 times now. Rashford's getting in form, and he's gone immediately. It's the absolute nonsense. It's unbelievable. It makes absolutely no sense. It's like he's trying to play bad. It is. It's like you're trying to lose in that case. Because why would you do that? And I'm not going to give a hard time about Alejandro Garnacho, but he's been bad. And he's not that good on the left. He came on and kept trying to dribble players and launch shots. Look at all these shots. 5 shots from outside the box from the same spot. 1 out of 5 duels won, lost possession 9 times. They're not even close in terms of performance. And it's been like this for a long time. He wasn't better. And, I could go back to the goal. I could go back to the goal as well and talk about, Anyway, I could go back to the goal and I could talk about the conceding, because you can't allow one player being slack. Have you ever watched Alejandro Garnacho? The guy doesn't track back at all. He doesn't track back at all. You can put it on Rashford. Nobody else does either in our forward line. Bruno's nowhere to be seen most of the time. Garnacho's nowhere to be seen most of the time. It's the same. There's no consistent standard to how we treat our players and what we ask for our players. If you want to bench Marcus Rashford for not tracking back, fine. He did, by the way. Both of the goals, and I could bring up pictures on both of the goals, he's back in the defensive area. You watch the third goal back, and Garnacho's wandering. He's actually the one who breaks the press, by the way. You can see this on Twitter. There's a whole section on it. Someone broke it down. Garnacho is there, and he starts wandering towards someone, and then Bruno starts wandering towards him, and then they break through, and he's just sort of jogging. He doesn't track back, and I don't even want to give him a hard time for it, because this is the standards that are asked for at United. None. There's no consistency to it. Bruno's one of the worst, most disorganized, poor pressers in the team, and there is no accountability for it. None. 0. Dalot does nothing against Tottenham, has an absolutely horrific game, plays 90 minutes. Where's the accountability? You could say, who could bench him there? I don't give a shit. Put somebody there. Put somebody there. It doesn't matter. Put somebody there. Put somebody there. It doesn't matter. We don't do anything. The structures are poor. The setup is poor. We can talk about like an individual thing all day long. Okay, you want to blame your winger for conceding goals? Are you joking? Look at this. Tell me this makes sense. Tell me this is a good rest defense structure. And then tell me it's going to be the winger's fault when we concede chances. Do we also forget that aside from the goals, we conceded 2 one-on-ones down the right side from their forward that were saved by Onana. And do we forget against Tottenham, we conceded 3 one-on-ones to Timo Werner that he bottled as well. So no, we didn't concede the goals there because Onana bailed us out. We could have conceded 7 goals to Tottenham. We could have conceded 6 goals last night. So you can go on about 1 or 2 or here, but that's where the standards are completely misaligned. We can see just as many chances down the right as we do down the left because the setup is absolute nonsense. Okay? The setup is absolute nonsense. If you look right here, when he comes to the left and they move and scoot this way, you have the same giant gap on the right, and the same thing happens. It happens to everybody. It happens on both sides. It happens everywhere. Is it happening down the right because Ahmad isn't tracking? If it is, then where's the standards? Somehow it's apparently always our winger's fault, but it's every single winger and every single forward. So whose job is that if that were true? It's the manager's. He's not doing anything about it. And benching one player and then coming on and conceding a goal instantly shows you that that player's not the problem. And the same thing happened against Tottenham. It happens every single game, time after time after time. And they target it. You could see it from the first minute that when Dalot tucks in here, they had Samu and their right winger targeting Lisandro Martinez. They've been targeting him for absolutely weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. They're running at Lisandro Martinez. Every single person is doing it. It happens all game. They're running at Lisandro Martinez. It happened with Tottenham. It happened against FC 20. It happened with what do you call it? It happened against Porto. And yeah, the difference is on the right side, we're still conceding those chances. We are conceding the same chances. But you also have a faster player in Mazraoui over here because he's a fullback. I said in the pre-thing, if you swapped Lissandro and Dallo here, it would look a little bit better. It would look a little bit better because Dallo is more athletic, right? And he can run in spaces more. That's a simple adjustment that could actually improve this situation. But it's just, this is nonsense. And this doesn't even do anything for you. What is the advantage of this setup? What is the advantage of this setup? They're just standing next to each other, essentially marking themselves out of the game. What does this setup give you? When you do this, he gets the ball passing out here and he just goes straight backwards because there's nowhere to go. It's not, a lot of teams invert their fullbacks, but they move things differently. If you actually watch them, when they invert their fullbacks, you know where Eriksen would go? Over here. And where Rashford would go? Here. He would tuck in. They do rotations. They don't just send their wingers to the touchline. They do rotations. When your fullback comes in, you don't just push your other center mid up and have them sit on the striker. They come out wide and they go inside and deeper. The other issue is that you kind of do that when you have like a Saliba in defense here or a Virgil van Dijk who you can rely on to manage one-on-one situations regularly. But it happens on both sides. And now people are talking about Maguire, about De Ligt and all of that. It just makes no sense. The rotations are bad. Dallo ends up being the wide man, rarely actually. When we settle into defense, he comes back. But when we're in possession, he doesn't. And often in possession, he ends up over here. So it's nonsensical. There's no logic to it. And the attacks keep coming down the right zone. Can Rashford defend better? Totally he can. Totally he can. So can the rest of our forwards. But how we do it is very, very different. It's very, very different. And the other factor is that City do not play in transition, Kevin, because this only is a problem when you turn the ball over. It's only an issue if you turn the ball over. City do not try to play in transition. We do. When you play purely for possession-based football, like City and Arsenal do, you defend by holding the ball. You defend by holding it. They have exposed systems in there, but they do this by protecting themselves with holding the ball and not giving away possession. We're not trying to hold the ball. We're trying to score quickly. That's why we'll end up just shooting the ball through the lines. That's why Bruno stays on all the time to just make Hollywood passes. You cannot play risky transition attacks and have huge defensive flaws in your setup. Those are two things that are incongruent of each other. And you can argue all you want, or you can actually watch the games and see we're shit. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. Pep Guardiola knows what he's doing, obviously. He does this. But they hold possession like crazy. And that is priority number one for City is possession. It's the same for Arteta and Arsenal. Possession is everything, and they defend with possession. You know for a fact that you can attack City. Everybody knows it. You can attack City with direct attacks. That's how Solskjaer was able to beat him, if you can win possession back. But they're so good at holding possession that you get so few chances. And that's Manchester City's whole philosophy. That's their whole philosophy of football. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot expose your system in possession and give the ball away easily. Every time it happens when we're doing a watch along, I'll sit there and say, okay, you can see it. It's exposed now. Now, don't turn the ball over. And what do? We turn the ball over. No, of course I don't want to see Eriksen out wide because he has no legs. It's all a solution to solve a different problem that makes no sense, okay? It's all a solution to solve different problems and they don't make any sense. That's why you need a midfielder with legs in here. That's why you need all of that. Yeah, well, the lack of athleticism is in our midfield is on purpose. You're starting Eriksen and Bruno so that they can create moments of magic. That's it. That's the reason. And it's to make goals. That's the point. It's all about trying to create something out of nothing instead of building up properly with these patterns and do it right. So you play players that have, that are wasteful with the ball, because again, you cannot turn over the ball that quickly. You cannot turn over the ball that quickly in this kind of setup. And yet you have Bruno who turns the ball over constantly. Still playing 90 minutes every game, and there's no accountability for it. There's no accountability for it. So it's those turnovers. And if you look at the goal, a lot of the goals we concede, they come from those high turnovers, and then teams run at us. And it's really that simple. It's not that complex. Football is really not that complicated. It's numerical advantages. And if you go back and look at the goals, Rashford scores on like a 1v5. If you look at the goals we conceded, we're equally manned to the attackers, okay? We are equally manned to the attackers, right? They'll have 6 guys attacking, and we will have 6 guys defending. They'll have 7 guys attacking, and we will have 7 guys defending. But when you look at us attack, we're 3 against 5. We're 5 against 8. We're 1 against 4. Football's a game of numbers. It's really numerical advantages because, yeah, you can rely on one-on-one battles all over the place when you're Real Madrid, and you for sure have the best, most physical, well-rounded, genius, intelligent players on earth. Not a lot of teams have that. And you can't, that's a tough philosophy to build on. That's a tough philosophy to build on. So you have to win and have your systems by balance. You have to balance your systems properly and have a good baseline on there until you get that. But even then, there's different philosophies of it. Winning by overloads is still how Arteta does it, still how Pep Guardiola do it. And they win a lot of good one-on-ones in defense. But in attack, they create overloads. We don't create overloads anywhere. We don't overload an attack, and we don't defend with more numbers than the opposition. And you have to at least do one or the other. You have to be really good at something. Yeah, Ben, correct. Rest defense is formed when you have time with the ball. If you lose the ball quickly, then you don't have a good rest defense. A lot of teams do that. Yeah, few clubs can build teams like Madrid. I know. We used to be one of them, but it's never going to be that way in England again. There's too much money. There's too much competition. You're never going to be guaranteed have the absolute best team. You're just not, you're not going to ever be guaranteed to have the best team and the best players in England. It's just not going to happen. Both of our goals are due to a goalkeeper mistake. That might be true, but that doesn't help the discussion. Our attacking structures are awful and require that much. That's sort of the point. Our attacking structures are awful and require that much luck, essentially, to work. You want to talk about like individual brilliance, right? I didn't say Eriksen's wasteful on the ball. Bruno's incredibly wasteful on the ball, and Eriksen has no legs. So both of them are playing with huge downsides, specifically because we need their magic that they might get. Rasmus Højlund's shot that he scores from is also 0.08 XG. So he scored 2 goals on 0.12 XG. Yeah, I agree. The goals got lucky. But that just tells you how bad our attacking patterns are. So you can, when Ten Hag did his quotes earlier in the week in the pre-match about what was it? He did his quotes in the pre-thing about how, we've created the 3rd most expected goals, yada, 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 which isn't true, by the way. Then I said, that's fine. Okay, well, that's not true, but that's not really the issue. The issue is how many chances we concede. Okay? It's boring. I don't know why you constantly go on about Rashford. Do you really think Rashford is going to solve the problem? Because Garnacho played the second half, and we didn't do any better. What's the difference? You can keep going on and on about it. I don't think Casemiro was that bad. He just doesn't have the legs for it anymore. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a problem. And, but we really don't create that many chances. We're actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th by understats measure. If you go on FB Ref, I think we're 5th in XG. But look at our expected goals against. This is the same on both. We're fucking 17th in chances against. And it's the same against Porto. It's not about scoring chances. It's about conceding them. We concede way too many chances. So the Spurs game happened. You can't just say it skewed it. So what? It's a game that happened. Should we just remove any bad game because it skews the results? Yeah, it did. It happened. It still happened. Even if you were to take 2 XG away, we would still be 11th or 12th. So we're about the 10th to 11th best team. We're about the 10th or 11th best team in England. That's the reality of it. Ronan Doherty, great content as always. Are we interested in Amarim? We could talk about him. I think yes, in the long term, but not now. It doesn't really have anything relevant now. We're still bad. We're just bad. We're just not good. And, it's funny. Like, I watched the Champions League game. I watched Mbappe give the ball away in the 75th minute for Real Madrid. And then or maybe it was like the 80th. And then he just stands there. I understand people criticize Mbappe's work rate, by the way. But not like this. And he's in Real Madrid, so, okay. I watch Salah walk around half the games, It's just, it is what it is. I know that people in our forward line don't do things, but there's no consistency to that decision making. Bruno Fernandes, like I said, is one of the worst pressers in the game. Is consistently out of position, consistently presses in completely random moments. And very often, he doesn't really get back to block anything while turning the ball over, and there's no accountability for it. There's no consistent accountability. Part of being a good leader is if you're going to punish. If you're going to have discipline, have discipline. But you have to be very, very consistent, or people will not know where the line is drawn. Should Rashford work harder in defense? I think so, probably. I think he could do more. But the goals were not on him, by the way. Lissandro loses his marker after Mazraoui and De Ligt lose duels against 2 attackers in their area. And Lissandro loses this guy and just lets him run in on net and pick up the rebound, The third goal, he's not even on the pitch. The one-on-ones, it's not really down to them. It's a comedy of errors, of things that just happen. And the structure is bad. What do you think about us losing our duels like it happens very much? I agree. I totally agree. But what I look at, remember we were talking a little bit earlier about, here, I'll pull them up, about this whole thing about interceptions and, who's leading on stats and things like that, right? And people were talking about how United have the most tackles and the most interceptions. So are they really not losing their duels? Not winning their duels? Or are we doing so many that it obviously stands out when we do lose? That we're just doing so many that it stands out when we lose. You know what I mean? And that is the answer to me, because as a team, I don't think it's a good thing to be leading in these categories. Here, we can look at it. Yeah, it's still the case. It's atrocious. So, we do too much. We're constantly doing too much. Look, we are first. So apparently we're not combative. Apparently we don't win our duels. I'm not calling you out. I'm saying I understand the problem. And yet somehow we're first in the league on tackles, first in the league on interceptions, and not even first in fouling. So what's the answer here? We lose our duels, and people say, well, if we just won them, then we'd be fine. But we are winning them. We win more than everybody, but look at the teams who don't. It's City and Liverpool. They're at the bottom of this list. So, you know, are they not winning their interceptions? No, they just have fuck all to do. Look, Aston Villa, Man City, Arsenal, you know, and obviously you'll get outliers in here like Leicester, but they're also at the top of the tackles list too. But in general, you can see that good teams have less, aka fewer duels to do. The better you are structurally, the less you have to do defensive work. The worse you are structurally, the more reliant you are on individual defenders. This is individual brilliance in defense. We're constantly reliant on that. And we win so many, and yet we're still one of the worst defensive teams in the league. What does that tell you? Right? That's pretty bad. That's just not a good thing. It's just not a good thing, unfortunately. So, yeah, a lot of problems, a lot of issues to sort out. And it's yeah, I mean, the narratives are often not backed up by reality and by evidence and all of that. You know, they're just not. And it's kind of sad. We're just bad. You know, at the end of the day, like that's the answer. You know, it's just that's the answer. We're bad. I remember a long time ago. Yeah, the worst. Exactly. It's the same defensively and offensively. The worse you are structurally, the more you rely on. You know, the more you rely on players to they have to win everything, right? Because you get these you're just a moment's team, and we've been like that for a long time. Check this out. I'm gonna go back to this. This is like super obnoxious, but I'm gonna go back to this because I made this point 3 years ago. This is not just a Ten Hag issue. This has been a problem for quite a long time. It was the same thing under Ollie, when Maguire and such were getting a lot of heat, and we were poor. You know, and people decided that Harry Maguire was a bad center back. It's still an issue. Here, I'll show you. I mean, I'll go back. This is 3 years ago. I've always had this position. You know, I took this data from FBref, but there was a chart based on how many defensive actions per 90 compared to pressures per 90. And you could see that Stones was like at the bottom. And Diaz, right? Where Maguire had to do double the defensive work, right? Maguire, Lindelof, and Varane were doing more defensive work than anybody. And when you went down to this one, you could see that it's about quantity. It was measuring quantity. That Stones and Diaz had to do virtually nothing, while Maguire had to do a lot of work. This is a position I've held for a long time, that the defenders that we have and our players are asked to do too much individually and are not backed up by a structure. And it's backed up by the stats. That was Who Scored was where I was looking at before, but you know, a lot of the websites have them. The Premier League stat website has it too. But yeah, we have to do too much. And it's the same this year. We're doing all the tackles, all the work, you know. And so if I brought up that chart again for this year, which maybe I'll do just for fun to just show our defenders, we would see that Lissandro, you know, Kabi Mainu in the midfield, you know, is leading the league in interceptions, and such, are doing a lot of defensive work. So we're not losing all our duels. We're doing too many of them. And that's a problem. We don't want to be doing that many. And the more we do that, the more mistakes will happen. The more mistakes will happen. It's just a numbers game. The more you do, the worse it's going to be. Please tell me sacked on Monday. I can't tell you that that's the case as of now. I cannot. You can see the whole explanation of everything earlier on in the video. So, all right. I've gone on and on about that. I want to go to... yeah, I mean, you don't have the most tackles and most interceptions in the league with players who aren't trying. You just don't. You know, you just don't. Yeah, they were crossing it over Martinez because too short. Yep. Anyway, you just don't. It's just not what happens. You know. So, all right. let's go to our vote now for Aston Villa, because this was what we had last time. This was the team. Xerxes, Bruno, Ahmad, Rashford, Kabi, Ugarte, all of that. I want to see if it changes now. I'm quite curious. So let's do it. At striker, now that Rasmus is back, I'm curious if people think that we're better with Rasmus or better with Xerxes still. I could definitely see Rasmus winning this now. I mean, he, scoring goals is the business. One shot, one drop, one opportunity, and one goal. It makes sense. But from a team perspective, well, I'm not sure it really matters, quite honestly. I think Rasmus will win because he scored, and sometimes that's all you need. But I'll give Xerxes an option at the 10. How about that? I'll put him into the 10. Why not both? Yeah, I'll put Xerxes as an option in the 10. I'll put him in the 10. I don't think he should be at the 10 for what it's worth, but I'll put him in the 10. But I do think that any sign of the progress and control we were gaining was pretty reliant on Xerxes, but at the same time, we couldn't find the balance on scoring goals. And that's because we have to get more elsewhere. All right. Xerxes, or Rasmus it is, rather. Expected that. All right. Rasmus Højlund in there. All right. Let's go on the wings. Let's put them as a grouping. Rash, Garna, Rashford, Ahmad, Garna, Ahmad. I don't think we really have any other permutations. So let's go with that. Yeah, Højlund's good on the run. He's good on the counter. But one of the things that I think, when we looked at like Aston Villa last year when we beat them, they played this exceptionally high line. Very, very high line. They don't play that high anymore. They've kind of settled in a little bit more to a different structure, and they're very, very physical. They're very physical. They don't play quite as high a line. There's not going to be so much space in behind them anymore. And so we're not going to be able to beat them in the same way that we did before, which is we were just kind of spamming balls in behind, and they kind of played into our hands. It's going to be a bit of a different matchup. And by the way, I'm going to go live again on Big Up. On Big Up to do the tactics board and all of that, to preview Aston Villa, talk about things, and draw it all out and hang out, because I didn't really get to do a pre-match chat. It also has a guest speaker feature, so if you want to come and share your thoughts with me on Sir Jim, on Ten Hag, on tactics, on any of it, come over there and I'll bring you on as a speaker. It's at 1 o'clock my time, so that's 8. It's a little over 2.5 hours from now. 2.5 hours from now. We'll be live over there. Let me put the link in the bottom, because I realize I did not. I don't have the right link on here. Let me put the link below and then resave the video. Yeah, I'm gonna do like just a look and discussion and kind of hang out over there for a bit at 8 p.m. UK. Okay, 8 p.m. UK. All right, Rashford and Ahmad winning this one. That sounds about right. And this is a good balance. I mean, I like Rashford, Ahmad, and Højlund. I thought that was a good balanced front three. I just think the rest of the team is a disaster. Let's go 10. I'm going to say Bruno, Eriksen, Xerxes. And I mean, on the whole discussion of things, I think it's unacceptable that Bruno doesn't get benched. There's just no accountability. And as to the point I made on that, you know, one of the things, Mount's injured, remember? One of the things that I've said is like, look, you can hold players to standards, but then do it. You know? I said, why is Dalot not get dropped? Why does Bruno not get dropped? Why is all of this? Because what they've done and what they've been doing, why is Maguire, you know, I said before him that why is Maguire not getting in over Lisandro Martinez? You know? Why is Maguire not getting in? And I had some people give me a hard time in here just yesterday about that, but you can see why I said that. Maguire's a good player. Maguire's a good player. You know, if people are making individual errors and problems and all of that, then why is there no accountability? You know, it felt to me that the singling out of Rashford yesterday, even if it was correct, it was still nonsense. It was like, oh, look, I got to prove a point about who's the problem, except it got worse after. But nobody else gets held accountable. That's nonsense. You know, that's nonsense. There is no accountability, consistency. Maguire wasn't injured against Porto, but Maguire probably would get killed in the setup too, but at least we wouldn't concede on the crosses so much. They wouldn't keep being able to spam crosses in. He would actually clear those. You know what I mean? It's not the point. Look, I agree. The team is set up to fail. What I'm talking about is this point on accountability, right? If you're actually holding consistent accountability, then more players should be dropped. So when someone says, "Oh, Rashford's just being held accountable for not working," okay, that's only going to spur further considerations and concerns and fears in the dressing room of favoritism, right? Because there's a lot of other players who are doing far worse this season and getting away with it and skirting by week after week after week after week and not being held accountable for the mistakes and the things that they're doing. And I think that that's where you get real problems, is when consistency isn't there, then you lose the ability to make the argument about accountability. This is really close between Eriksen and Xerxes, so I'm going to let people vote, you know? It was like in his first season. You know, one player who got held accountable for that? Fred. After Liverpool. He stopped starting. Even after Barcelona, after everything. Somehow, after that Liverpool game, Fred got dropped, and then he got sold. But he was one of our best players that season when he played. And he was integral to some of the better games that we played. And he was integral to Barcelona, and he was integral to the Newcastle win, and he was integral to some of our best performances that season. And then we went into Europe without Fred, and we got knocked out. It was a joke. That's exactly what happened, and it was crazy to me. You know, and then if you remember, like, the semifinal against Brighton, right, of the FA Cup, we were awful in that game. And then we had to bring Fred on to kind of salvage it. And we wouldn't have gotten through that without him. He only played the FA Cup final because Eriksen ended up being injured, from what I remember. He was dropped for months. Like, he stopped starting, and he got dropped from Europe after being a consistent part of the team that had progressed through the Europa League competition, beaten Barcelona, all of that. He did get dropped. Yeah, you can look at it. He did. He helped a lot in those games, and then he was gone. All right, it's really close, but yeah, we were really bad that season after the League Cup final. All right, it was really close, but Xerxes ended up winning, which I'm not sure that's the best idea, you guys, but you know, so be it. So be it. Anthony got loads of time and then eventually got dropped. It took him a really, really long time to get dropped. Really, really, really long time to get dropped. All right, so we're going to say Eriksen, Ugarte. I'm just going to put some permutations in here. Because Because I'm not going to put Bruno, I guess, because we've sort of decided that he's not playing based on this. God, what do I put? Oh gosh, I'm just gonna do these options, and if somebody wants something, if people think other is the best option, then so be it. You know, I think it has to be Ugarte Kabimenu, because if you actually set that up right, it would actually be good. But I'd take Ugarte and Casemiro too, similar to what we did against Barnsley. You know, I thought that was actually kind of cool. That was hardworking. But Mainu Ugarte is our best midfield partnership, and we really should be getting that going. It's kind of ridiculous that Ugarte didn't get any minutes. It's actually crazy that he didn't get any minutes in a game where we could have used some energy, you know? Mount's injured. Mount is injured. He's not going to start. Even if he's in the squad, which I'm not sure he will be. He's got a knock or he's injured, you know? All right, this one's pretty clear. This one is pretty clear what everybody thinks. I saw Ten Hag say that he would like to have that both Mesraoui and Dalot could play on the left, but he prefers the angles. Maybe you should like wake up a little bit. Because I think Mesraoui would be a lot better on the left, staying wide. We've kind of talked about that and voted that a bunch of times. Mazraoui's going to win this again for sure. He's going to win this again for sure. We've done this every week that everybody looks and says, yeah, Mazraoui's technical. He's good with both feet. He's all that. Why doesn't he play on the left? And Ten Hag acknowledges that they both can, but for some reason thinks it would be better with Dalot. And so far that's looked disastrous. To me, anyway. Angie, what is ludicrous is Ten Hag's so-called game on, which is always personnel-based, somehow failing his players, even like Martinez, De Ligt, even Mazraoui. Yeah. He's got all the players he's got. All the players he's got that he likes. Got all the players that he likes. And they still look bad. All right, it's going to be Mazraoui. The thing is, Ugarte can absolutely play in a possession-based team. He's not actually bad in possession. He's, it's what he's good at out of possession. It's what he's good at out of possession that's important. Cheeto signed his contract today. That's awesome. And it's using him properly out of possession. He's not sitting in front of the back four shielding. We kind of talked about that last time. If he does that, it's not going to work. All right, let's go with the center backs partnership here. Let's go. Let's stick with this. Maguire and Evans. I don't know. I'm just going to throw this in here. Yeah, high intensity man-to-man press. That's not why he got kicked out of the possession-based team, you know. Super Maguire. The thing is, Avrad, here's what's really confusing, right? He didn't. This stupid Dalot inversion only started against Southampton after 30 minutes. Or after the first half. It wasn't our plan. This inversion was not even our plan. it's this constant reactivity that Ten Hag has, where when the results go bad or something isn't working, he just reacts so strongly, and it creates new problems. It's the same in his first season. In preseason, in training, in a lot of the private trainings, we were doing fullback overlaps over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And I mean, seriously, over and over and over. It was a focus of training. I know that to be true from people I speak with that were involved. It was over and over and over, okay, that we did that. And that was the plan this year. Play a false nine, push the wingers in a little closer, and overlap the fullbacks. And then we abandoned it instantly. It took 2 games, 3 games to just completely abandon any semblance of that plan and switch to a whole new program, a whole new thing, In game, however, he does not adapt. He does stick with one plan. He does stick with one plan. In game, he sticks with one plan over and over and then doesn't change it. We knew that Luke Shaw was injured or was going to be struggling to be injured. If you recall, we kind of knew that. We knew Tyrell Malacia wasn't there. We still signed Mazraoui instead of a left back because it wasn't supposed to matter. And we were supposed to be fine getting through it, getting through the period without a left back. That's why we signed Mazraoui. We waited a long time, and there was a look at left backs, and then he decided to continue with getting a right back in Mazraoui because of the technical ability to play both sides that they have. We knew, we could say, well, we don't have the left-footed left back, but we knew. We knew all of this. They knew that. They knew the situation, Jimmy, in your opinion, did Tuchel turn the job down because of the transfer control, because of uncertainty about the footballing structure? That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I think some of it was, from what I heard, some of it was certainly to do with the job on offer, right? That the role, the power, all of that wasn't really what he wanted. True, Alvarad, true. But there was reports from Build, I think it was as well, that there was concerns over like the people in charge, and maybe he didn't rate them or something. I don't know. Or maybe he didn't rate their ideas, their view of the squad, where it was at. Maybe he saw things differently. So I don't know what the reason was exactly. I did know that he wasn't too like there was already concerns about his position on how he sees, the job itself. And I think he would have wanted more say in it. So that might be the middle ground that aligns with both data points, which is like, he didn't like the view of others on how the role was, of the people that they'd hired on how the role was. But he did not invert him in the first 2 games of the season. He only did it to solve the problem of playing Christian Eriksen. You can watch. That's why. Sure, the inversion on its own isn't the issue, but the reason it was done and what problem it was trying to solve, it just creates more issues. Right, there was something about that, Rudiger and etc. Anyway, this is the team. This is the team that you guys have voted for this time. Slightly different to last. We've dropped Bruno Fernandes and put 2 strikers in, and we've dropped Lisandro Martinez and put Harry Maguire in. So it hasn't changed in a couple of weeks, but it is. And, how could this play in game? Ideally, it would play pretty sensibly, Actually press high. Whoa, something's going wrong with this whole thing here. Actually press high. Sit up there. Send the fullbacks. Do something. Anything different to what we've seen anything different to what we've seen. Do I think Tuchel belongs in the tier of Pep and Klopp? Absolutely not. I don't think Tuchel's that good. I would rather we don't sign or hire Thomas Tuchel. I could accept it, but I don't think he's the right guy. I don't think he's the right guy for us. Yeah, I don't think he's the right guy for us. And, you know, I think the last little thing here, I think Onana deserves a lot of credit for what he's been doing, how he's been playing. He saved us a lot of goals. It would be a lot worse without him. Please watch the video. Watch the video, okay? Watch the video if you want to know, because I spent a while explaining it and timed out a couple of people who were being obnoxious about, you know, why it took more than 3 seconds to explain the actual manager situation. It takes explanation. It takes understanding of how group, organization, business dynamics work to actually get the point on it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not insulting you for coming in and asking. I'm just saying you should watch the earlier part of the video, okay? Watch the earlier part of the video where I'm discussing it. Is before I got into any of the tactics. It was before any of that, the first 15, 20 minutes or so. And maybe like from 5 or 10 minutes on, for 10 minutes, when we broke down Sir Jim Ratcliffe's quotes and his video and went through it. And I just would recommend watching that to understand what I said and the position that it is. I just, and again, I'm not like giving you a hard time about asking. It's just, it requires explanation, you know? It wasn't something that can be broken down into one word or sentence, you know? Unfortunately. And I know that that's what people want, and that's what goes onto Twitter, but you know, it was a full explanation that makes a lot of sense. It's hard to condense it correctly into one thing, and you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. It's hard to pick our worst manager. Ten Hag, the most disappointing one. Well, you know, the thing that I wonder is, you know, does he think like if we finish 8th and win a trophy again, is that success? Is that his measure? Because I think that that's a disaster. I think this is a disaster. I think that would be awful. I would feel the trophy to me would feel worthless if we keep racking up league cups while finishing 8th and being out of Champions League. I'm kind of already fed up with it, you know. Winning the first one was awesome. It felt great. Winning the FA Cup felt good, but it didn't last. I felt bad about it. You know, like later I was like, God, this still sucks. Next season's still like, this was still such an awful season. It doesn't really make up for it. If we did that again, I think I'd feel nothing. I don't think I would have a really, really hard time enjoying a trophy this year of League Cup or something like that. If we're 8th and we're out of Europe and we're doing terrible, you know, I would have a really hard time feeling happy about that. I think I'd feel incredibly depressed by the end of the season. Yeah, we got Europa this year, so surely progress, we should do better than that, you know? I know people love it, and I think if you're local, I think if you go to the games, then certainly it would feel better. You know what I mean? But I would have a hard time. I would have a hard time enjoying it. Like, the enjoyment wouldn't last, you know what I mean? Because then you're sitting there like, God, it's still a bad season. We still don't have Champions League next year. We're going through this again and again and again. You know what I mean? That would be frustrating. That would be frustrating. Yeah, I don't think it would give a lot of hope for the future, I guess is the point. I need that hope for the future is what I need. Not just a fleeting, you know, enjoyment, but hope for the future. I think that lasts a lot longer. Okay, let me see. Was there anything else covered? Yes, I saw that Pogba's ban was reduced. Good for him. I don't know. Good for him. He's not coming back to Manchester United, you know, so it's sort of irrelevant. West Ham don't have a better team than us. Come on now. Yeah, I think that I don't know what to say anymore. I think I've covered it. I'm going to go over in 2 hours in a little bit to the link is down below to Big Up, and we'll do tactics, and I'll bring some people on and chat with them. You know, anybody wants to share their opinion and speak, come over there because it's better. But you know, I think every time we start to do poorly, it lasts too long, and people want to spin it on the squad being bad, but it can't be. Maybe it constantly looks bad because we keep letting it descend into crap. You know what I mean? So, all right, that's it for today. For this, we'll see anybody who's there. The link is below. You can come sign up. If you try to sign up on your phone, sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, that's the thing. Try to sign up on a computer. You can join on your phone, but signing up on the computer, it works a lot better. It has had some issues with people signing up on the phone. But again, it's free and there's no ads and things like that. So, you know, just come join. It'll be fun. And the tactics board thing was honestly a blast. It was really cool. I'm very happy with the platform as something different. So during watch alongs and things like that, it's a lot more interesting than just sitting there listening to me yap, which I do anyway, but you know, it just adds to it. All right. That's it then. Thank you all. Enjoy your day. And if I see you later, then great. If you missed the beginning on the manager discussion, on the breakdown, on all of that, just go watch it earlier. Go to the first like 20, 25 minutes and get a full picture of things, okay? Thank you for watching. See y'all later. Oh, you want me to post a link here? Here. Yeah. Here. Join me. Join me there later on. Okay. See you later, guys.